Imagine waking up every morning in a city where your career grows faster than you ever expected. Your home's value quietly climbs year after year. Your weekends are spent hiking mountain trails or relaxing beside a lake instead of sitting in endless traffic. And the stress that once defined your life slowly begins to fade. For thousands of Americans, this isn't a fantasy. It has become reality. Yet the biggest surprise is that these opportunities aren't found in the places most people immediately think of. While millions continue chasing success in America's most famous cities, another group of places has been quietly creating wealth, attracting ambitious professionals, and offering a lifestyle that many believe is disappearing elsewhere. The question is simple, but the answer has been decades in the making. Most people assume becoming wealthy depends entirely on intelligence, hard work, or luck. Those qualities certainly matter, but history tells a far more complicated story. Again and again, ordinary people have transformed their financial futures simply because they recognized where opportunity was heading before everyone else did. The cities they chose were not accidental. They were shaped by government investment, groundbreaking industries, world-class universities, transportation networks, and economic decisions made years, sometimes generations, before newcomers ever arrived. The foundation of this story stretches back more than a century. On May 10, 1869, the completion of the first transcontinental railroad at Promontory Summit, Utah Territory, permanently changed the American economy. Goods, workers, and investment could now move across the continent faster than ever before, turning cities connected to these transportation networks into centers of commerce and innovation. Decades later, the Industrial Revolution transformed places like Chicago, Pittsburgh, and Detroit into economic giants, proving that when industries concentrate in one location, opportunity often follows. After World War II ended in 1945, another chapter began. Millions of returning veterans entered the workforce, and the federal government invested heavily in education, housing, highways, and scientific research. The passage of the Federal Aid Highway Act on June 29, 1956, created the interstate highway system, linking cities and accelerating suburban growth. Businesses gained faster access to customers, manufacturers expanded production, and entirely new metropolitan areas began attracting companies that no longer needed to remain in older industrial centers. At the same time, universities quietly became engines of prosperity. Institutions that had once focused primarily on education evolved into research powerhouses, producing engineers, scientists, entrepreneurs, and future business leaders. When Research Triangle Park was established in North Carolina in 1959, it demonstrated how cooperation between universities, government, and private industry could reshape an entirely changing economy. Similar partnerships would later transform cities across Texas, Utah, Washington, Idaho, Alabama, Tennessee, and beyond. The technology revolution accelerated these changes. In 1971, the introduction of the world's first commercial microprocessor helped launch a new era of computing. During the 1990s internet boom, technology companies expanded rapidly beyond California, searching for cities with educated workers, lower operating costs, and room to grow. Then, after the 2008 financial crisis, businesses began reconsidering where they invested, while families increasingly questioned whether the nation's most expensive metropolitan areas still offered the best path to prosperity. Everything changed once again in 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic transformed how millions of Americans worked, proving that many high-paying careers no longer required living near traditional corporate headquarters. Remote work, combined with rising housing costs in cities like San Francisco and New York, triggered one of the largest migration shifts in modern American history. Professionals began searching for places where their incomes could stretch further, where outdoor recreation was part of everyday life, where commutes were shorter, and where growing industries promised long-term career security. Suddenly, cities that had spent decades quietly preparing for growth found themselves at the center of a new economic revolution. But history contains a warning hidden beneath every success story. Not every fast-growing city remains affordable. Not every booming economy continues expanding forever. Some places rise because of a single industry and struggle when that industry declines. Others reinvent themselves again and again, attracting new businesses, new talent, and new investment with every economic transformation. The difference between these cities is rarely obvious until years later, when the greatest opportunities have already passed. Today, 10 American cities stand out for reasons that go far beyond high salaries or beautiful scenery. Their stories are connected by decades of careful planning, bold investment, technological innovation, and historic turning points that most people never noticed. The real mystery isn't simply which cities made people wealthy. It's how they quietly positioned themselves to become the next generation of America's opportunity capitals, while the rest of the country was looking somewhere else. In the next chapter, those hidden stories begin to unfold. The first clues began appearing long before most Americans noticed. While headlines continued focusing on New York, Los Angeles, and Silicon Valley, another collection of cities was quietly laying the foundation for the next generation of wealth. Their strategy wasn't built on one booming industry or a temporary housing surge. Instead, they invested in education, infrastructure, innovation, and industries that could survive economic downturns. Decades later, those decisions would transform them into magnets for ambitious professionals seeking both financial success and a healthier way of life. One of the clearest examples is Austin, Texas. Although the city had been growing steadily for decades, its transformation accelerated after Dell Technologies was founded there in 1984. Supported by the research capabilities of the University of Texas at Austin, the city attracted software companies, semiconductor manufacturers, and venture capital. During the 2010s, major corporations including Oracle and Tesla announced significant expansions or headquarters relocations to the Austin area, bringing thousands of highly paid engineers, executives, and entrepreneurs. Those who bought homes years earlier often watched their property values multiply as demand surged. Austin wasn't just creating high-paying jobs, it was creating long-term wealth through appreciation, investment, and innovation. 1,000 miles east, Raleigh, North Carolina, followed a different path. Its story began in 1959 with the creation of Research Triangle Park, located between Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. Instead of relying on factories, the region invested in research universities, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, software development, and healthcare. Companies found a steady pipeline of skilled graduates, while residents enjoyed tree-lined neighborhoods, expanding parks, and a cost of living that remained relatively manageable for many years. Families who settled there early discovered that financial security didn't always require living in America's most expensive metropolitan areas. Then came Huntsville, Alabama, a city that few outsiders associated with extraordinary opportunity. Everything changed after 1950, when the U.S. Army transferred its missile development program to Redstone Arsenal. Just a decade later, NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, officially dedicated on July 1, 1960, became one of the driving forces behind America's space program. Engineers, scientists, and aerospace contractors poured into the region, creating careers that combined high salaries with remarkable stability. What had once been a quiet southern community evolved into one of the nation's most educated metropolitan areas. Further west, another transformation was unfolding in Boise, Idaho. Once known primarily for agriculture and outdoor recreation, Boise entered a new era when technology manufacturing expanded. Companies like Micron Technology, founded in 1978, helped establish the city as an important semiconductor center. Combined with lower housing costs, access to mountains and rivers, and a growing entrepreneurial culture, Boise became one of the fastest-growing destinations for professionals seeking both career advancement and a calmer lifestyle. The pattern repeated across Salt Lake City, where technology companies flourished along what became known as the Silicon Slopes Corridor. Nearby ski resorts, national parks, and a strong culture of entrepreneurship attracted startups and investors alike. Meanwhile, Nashville, Tennessee, evolved far beyond its country music reputation. Healthcare giants, logistics companies, and corporate headquarters transformed the city into one of the South's fastest-growing economies. Yet another surprise emerged in Madison, Wisconsin, where the University of Wisconsin, Madison fueled decades of research, biotechnology, and medical innovation. Colorado Springs, Colorado, strengthened its economy through defense, cybersecurity, and aerospace industries anchored by military installations and research organizations. On the Pacific Coast, Seattle, Washington, home to companies such as Microsoft and Amazon, became a global technology powerhouse, while Tampa, Florida, expanded through finance, healthcare, logistics, and a growing technology sector supported by one of the nation's busiest ports. But here came the first unexpected twist. The highest salaries did not always produce the greatest wealth. Professionals earning less in cities like Raleigh, Huntsville, or Madison often accumulated more savings than workers making substantially higher incomes in places burdened by extreme housing costs and state taxes. Financial success depended not only on income, but on what remained after paying for everyday life. Then another disruption changed everything. The rise of remote work after 2020 encouraged thousands of workers to leave expensive coastal cities. They brought their salaries with them, accelerating demand in places that had once been overlooked. Home prices climbed rapidly, local infrastructure faced new pressure, and neighborhoods that had long been affordable suddenly became fiercely competitive. The very qualities that attracted newcomers, peace, affordability, and opportunity, were becoming harder to preserve. And just as these 10 cities appeared to have secured their place as America's new opportunity capitals, another economic revolution was quietly beginning. Artificial intelligence, semiconductor manufacturing, clean energy, and advanced robotics were attracting billions of dollars in fresh investment, setting the stage for an even greater transformation that could redefine where the next generation of American wealth would be created. So, what do these 10 cities ultimately have in common? Their success was never built on luck, and it certainly wasn't created overnight. Whether it was Austin's technology boom, Raleigh's research ecosystem, Huntsville's aerospace leadership, Boise's semiconductor industry, Salt Lake City's startup culture, Nashville's healthcare economy, Madison's university-driven innovation, Colorado Springs' defense sector, Seattle's global technology giants, or Tampa's expanding financial and logistics industries, each city spent decades building the conditions that allowed opportunity to flourish. They invested in education, infrastructure, skilled workers, and industries capable of adapting to change, instead of depending on a single economic engine. But history never stands still. On August 9, 2022, the CHIPS and Science Act signaled another major shift in America's economic future by encouraging billions of dollars in semiconductor manufacturing and scientific research. At the same time, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, biotechnology, robotics, clean energy, cloud computing, and advanced manufacturing began reshaping where companies choose to invest and where high-paying careers are likely to grow. Cities able to attract these industries while preserving livability, transportation, and a skilled workforce may become the next generation's greatest wealth creators. Yet there is one lesson history repeats more than any other. The people who built lasting wealth rarely chased yesterday's opportunities. They recognized tomorrow's. They moved before headlines celebrated a city, bought homes before prices exploded, started businesses before markets became crowded, and invested in communities long before they appeared on lists of America's fastest-growing places. No city can promise millionaire status, and no location guarantees peace of mind. But the right environment can multiply opportunity for those willing to prepare, adapt, and think long-term. America's next success stories are already being written, often in places that still seem ordinary today. The biggest question isn't whether opportunity exists, it always has. The real question is whether you'll recognize it before everyone else does.